Shadow Minister for Sport, Cindy McLeish, thanks for joining us on Flow.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Now, thanks also for keeping your finger on the pulse on what's going to happen for regional sport in Victoria. What do you understand to be the latest conditions they can operate under?
Well, look, we haven't had an update to the advice at the moment, but it's pretty tricky when you've got 150 people, which is the Chief Health Officer's recommendation, being able to be at a facility, an outdoor facility, and that is including the players, umpires, all of the people that are there to make the game happen, and maximum spectators. So kids sport, like parents are tearing their hair out. Here at adult sport, the same, and we saw on the long weekend loads of competitions choosing to have a bye or postpone matches because it just wasn't an easy work through for them.
Yeah, you mentioned in a press release you sent out about leagues going across the border if they could into New South Wales. I want to catch that in a moment, but parents and junior sport, I'm trying to get a straight answer out of Victorian Health about whether they're allowed to be at the ground or not, and whether they're required to be there. And most parents want to be there to watch their kids, or they would certainly happily stay in their cars to make sure that they are keeping away from other people. What is the current situation for parents attending?
Look, it's really confusing what's going on out there because people can often go to the games and stay in their car, which is fine, but does that mean they're in the 150? Does it mean they're separate because they're in their car and they're not going out? If they park outside, walk in, they're trying to work out how to monitor the number of spectators, and it just got too hard. It's just easier because, you get some of these larger leagues, like the Goulburn Valley League or down at Barwon, they have a lot more than 150 come to a game. And, you've got easily over 50 just with the players and umpires and support staff. So, looking at 100 people around a footy oval where you could fit a lot more, safely distanced, people could stay in family groups. But it's just become really confusing and really difficult. So it's just been easier for the leagues to pull the pin.
And then you look at that situation you've adverted to, I think, in the Pickler League, and we know from the Sunraysia League, the towns over the border in New South Wales will be laughing here because suddenly there's a whole bunch more people travelling into New South Wales under the more permissive arrangements to enjoy their sporting match there.
Look, I think those in New South Wales have been laughing at a lot more than just sport coming across the border. They look at the situation in Victoria as we hit our fourth lockdown and they see the disruption. And yes, they are choosing to go and have their events interstate because they can at least have people come to them there. They're not under the same restrictions. We've seen even AFL spun off a couple of games from Marvel Stadium down to Tasmania. Hobart and Launceston are the winners there. The clubs are really looking for what they can do, how they can get the most out of this and the least disruption.
And what is the status of the lockdown when you consider it supposedly ended, I think, last Thursday, but yet you've still got these new restrictions still hanging on after the lockdown?
Look, that's right. And every week the Chief Health Officer puts out his directions and sporting bodies are really waiting for the directions to know. Now, it's really difficult if they come out at the last minute to say you're allowed to have crowds. And at Geelong, they're not having crowds for Geelong and Footscray, which is, 2 versus 3 on the ladder. It's going to be a cracker of a game. And, they want to be organised and to be told the last minute, hey, listen, you are going to be able to have 2,000, 5,000 fans and they've got to get that sorted. They need a little bit of notice. But we've got clubs all around the state grappling, and the AFL, their latest guidance actually says a maximum venue capacity at any one time has been removed for junior and senior. So this means the only number of people that are allowed is those that are necessary to conduct the activity, the players, the coaches, the umpires.
And that's what Victoria Health have directed us to today. They've sent something back to us simply highlighting what they already told us with a highlighter on someone's mobile phone saying those that are necessary for the conduct of the activities. This is in response to our question about whether parents can attend. Now, so what does that mean? The club needs to determine whether parents need to be there or not. I mean, no club is going to stick their neck out and say parents are necessary if the health department's view is that they weren't.
And it puts everybody in a pretty tricky situation too, because a lot of parents, if a kid gets hurt or injured, they want to be there. And you can imagine parents are quite invested in being there to support their kids for junior sport.
Well, as a junior coach myself, and usually you're very thin on for volunteers in the actual running of the team, it's really helpful to have the parent that you can send a child if they come off injured and say, go to mum, go to dad, and if you need further attention, you can be dealt with by a parent. But if the parents can't be there, it's actually increasing risk for the kids.
Look, and it starts to blur, who's necessary, and you think, I need a couple of parents to help take the oranges out and take some drinks or to do this, and you might have a couple of extra runners or people on the sidelines to help. Then, who are you choosing to be part of that necessary group? So it's just confusing. And, we've got to keep in mind, Ricky, that so many parts of country Victoria never had a case ever. They've not been exposure sites, and they're subject to these exact same restrictions. And even Geelong, we know that they've not had a case recently. They're not a hotspot exposure site or anything like that. Yet there's nobody from Geelong allowed to go to Cardinia Park for the big game on the weekend.
Yep. So that's the only AFL game happening in Victoria this weekend, but even then the fans can't attend that match.
Correct.
Yeah, look, it just does seem, when we've talked about this on air otherwise, it seems to us that regional Victoria is just an afterthought whenever these directives are made by the state government. We
wonder about that all the time because sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And this is an example. The exposure sites are pretty well contained to a couple of areas, but we've locked down everything, and we've certainly locked down, towns and cities hundreds and hundreds of kilometres away from any of these infections.
Cindy McLeish, thanks for getting in touch with us and keeping us updated on this. We're going to pursue the state sports ministers as well to find out just exactly where things are going to land, so please keep us up to date.
No problem.